Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to take a look at the Transformers 2 Series Gamer Edition 05 Deluxe Class Cliffjumper. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comment section down below. Is it a pickup or a pass? Now let's take a look at the figure's packaging. So here we have the packaging. Starting at the very front, we have Transformers on the side. We have these 2 Series and Gamer Edition logos at the bottom of the box. We have Cliffjumper in white text with a white Autobot symbol. We have 05 because this is the 5th figure, a part of these 2 Series Gamer Edition subline. We have a little game controller button done in silver and blue. And we have Cliffjumper doing a really cool action pose with this really nice artwork. Of course, we have an open window displaying the figure in the packaging. We have the Transformers War for Cybertron video game logo at that top corner of the box. We have another one at the top of the box itself with that same game controller button. And if we do turn to the side, we have another 05 in that same game controller button. Again, we have 2 Series down the side of the box with Deluxe Class in several different languages and a really cool close-up of Cliffjumper's head and chest. And if we do turn to the back of the box, the figure transforms in 21 steps. There's a product shot of him and his robot, his alt mode, and of course displayed with his included backdrop. We also do have a brief bias saying Cliffjumper spots a horde of Decepticons preparing to attack Omega Supreme and unleashes a defensive blast of fire. And of course on the front side, we have another really cool action kind of running pose of Cliffjumper, overall looking very cool on that side of the box. And that is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into the review. Now, before we take a look at the details of Cliffjumper's robot mode, I do want to quickly show off the included backdrop. This is the Protect Omega Supreme backdrop. As you can see here, we have somewhat of a hallway with some really cool structures and buildings and I guess kind of bridges. Really cool details there. We also do have the Transformers War for Cybertron video game logo at that little platform there. Also on the side flap here, we do have 05 and 2 Series. On the other flap here, we do have Gamer Edition, Transformers, and that same game controller button. Since this is a backdrop or sort of a display base, you can grab the included figure, that being Cliffjumper, and display it on there. And I think that looks really cool. That is pretty much it for the included backdrop. Let's now take a look at the details of Cliffjumper's robot mode. Here we have Cliffjumper in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the details. Starting at the very top with the head, we have some really nice silver for the face, some blue for the eyes, some red for the main helmet section, and some silver for those horns. I do really like the glossy black for the entire shoulder with some really nice kind of orangish red detailing going down the arm. I also do like this very circular kind of wheel design on the forearm with some red for the forearm and some gray for the hand and bicep. I do like the very angular design with all the layers of panels on the chest with a very classic Autobot symbol done in orange. And I do like the front headlights actually from the alt mode right here with a really cool kind of diamond arrow shape done in black and orange, and this really cool kind of illuminating orange effect on the chest done in black and orange. I think that looks really good right there. And there's kind of a gunmetal gray for the top of the legs, and the rest of the legs are mostly done in that dark reddish orange color. We actually have the other wheels on the inner part of the leg there, not looking too bad. And if we do look at the side profile over here, overall not looking too bad. If you don't know, of course, this is really just a direct repaint, slight retool of the original Gamer Edition Deluxe Class Bumblebee, which I thought was overall a pretty good figure. But if you do have any complaints or problems with the figure, pretty much all those are going to stay the same with this figure right here. Which one of them, quite a few people actually had a problem with the entire front chest region here. So if you had a problem with that on Bumblebee, you're pretty much going to have that same complaint or problem with this. I never really had a major problem with this front chest piece, mostly of course from the front view. It's not too bad. Really, it's of course when you actually look at the side profile, you can actually see quite a few gaps and emptiness. A lot of people had a problem with it sticking out too much. I never really had a big problem with that. My main complaint was there's actually quite a bit of hollowness in there. It would have been nice if they actually added a couple extra panels just to make it a bit more neat. But if we do look at the back, overall not really that bad. My main complaint back here is this backpack. It's actually very loose. Sometimes it'll actually pop off during transformation. Even when you don't transform it, when just posing it around, it'll pop off. I think the main problem is this actually tabbed into place and secured by just a few friction nubs. There's actually no pin, which I think was the biggest mistake. I think probably what they should have done is this actually should have been tabbed in by a pin, because that would never come out. I had the same problem with Bumblebee every time I transformed it, pretty much every time. Every time I went to pose it around, it would get really loose and pop off. So it's a bit unfortunate they didn't take that opportunity to fix it, but truth to be told, I'm not really surprised that they changed it. Of course, they really wanted to be cheap and just repaint it, but as far as problems go, that's pretty much it. Just the chest region of the backpack. Everything else I'm actually thoroughly impressed with, and I think this is a very fun repaint and a very fun figure. So as for articulation, I think it's overall pretty much the exact same thing as Bumblebee. I think probably the only area that it was really different is the head. I think it might be actually slightly less articulated because the head is of course a new mold, and I think it's actually slightly bigger than Bumblebee, but all the other areas are the same. So the head can slightly look up and down, of course, and it can look left and right. The arms can move out and in, forward and back. The little shoulder panels can actually move out of the way to accommodate the articulation. There is a bicep rotation and elbow bends. There is no wrist rotation. There is a full functioning waist rotation, which is good to see. The legs can kick forward, back out to the side. There is rotation at the top of the leg. There is a knee bend, and there is technically no ankle pivot, but if you actually can somewhat actually work one in, so there is actually an ankle pivot out, which of course you really can't use because typically it does pivot in for poses. The reason why this is actually due to transformation. You actually do hinge the feet in, so that's why that's there. But if you do rotate the leg around, of course, you can actually get that pivot in. Which do keep in mind, if you do that, of course, you'll actually have the back of the leg facing forward, which doesn't look as good. So there will be a bit of a sacrifice if you do want to use that, but entirely up to you if you want to use that sacrifice or use that opportunity there. But I think overall pretty good. They probably could have worked in maybe a way to actually have either one, like a wrist rotation or an ankle pivot, but because I do have to say, typically with Deluxes, they at least have one or the other. They at least have an ankle pivot or a wrist rotation, but unfortunately this figure doesn't have either. At least he does have a waist rotation, but I really think they probably could have done something a bit better with that. But as far as accessories go, if you do have Bumblebee, they're the exact same ones. He does come with this really cool, like, huge cannon here, which is Blasphemous compatible, and it does have that same gimmick. Of course, you can remove the form and attach onto there. That'll show off in just a sec, which I think looks really cool, really well sculpted. I do love all the kind of canister detailing, really nice nut and bolt detailing, really nice surface detailing. As for the next blaster, it's kind of a thinner, almost sniper rifle type weapon, which is Blasphemous compatible as well. I think that looks really cool. And as for the final weapon, we do have the sword. I do love all the surface detailing, the little etches, and lines in there. I think it looks absolutely amazing. So I do have that same problem where none of them are really painted. I think that's a wasted opportunity there. They could have used that same kind of illuminated orange effect from the chest and like put it on the sword, on the weapons there. I think that would have been a really good idea. If you do like to custom paint your figures, I think this is like literally a perfect opportunity for you to do it because it's pretty much a blank canvas. There is no paint on any of these whatsoever. It's just that dark gray plastic, which I think is fine. Of course, you could say it could be worse. They could have used that unfinished gray. I think that would have looked awful. So of the plastic they use, I think it's not too bad, but I think there was some huge potential to make them look a lot cooler. I've actually seen a few upgrade kits out there of like actual lights, like making the sword light up. So if you want to get some of those, I think that'd be pretty cool as well. And again, if you do like to custom paint your figures and weapons, a pretty good opportunity right now. So how you can store all these, of course, the sword can actually store in the hand, which is typically how I do that post and port system. And if you actually do flip to the back, technically this storage is only really for the alt mode, but you can use it right here. The entire backpack, you can actually see 4 sets of slots right here. There's actually 2 and 2, as you can see. And there is actually tabs on these weapons and the swords. You can store them back there. Do keep in mind if you do that, it actually might make the figure a bit top and back heavy, so it could fall. But you can use it if you want to. Just be aware, of course, you might have to pose it slightly different for it to be a bit more stable. But I typically actually do store one on here, and I just leave one off to the side. I typically do just leave this one off to the side because I actually prefer this weapon over the other. That is just my opinion anyway. But you can just remove the form like that. It's just that post and port system, and that can just plug into place like that. And I think that actually looks really, really cool. I think that looks really nice. I guess in a way, I somewhat actually do kind of like how it's just a solid gray because the bicep is a solid gray, so it actually kind of looks like it's kind of matching and sort of forms out of the arm. In a way, I guess I can somewhat understand it, but I still would have liked to just a tad bit more paint, like maybe some gunmetal gray or something really would have put this figure over the top. But that is pretty much it for accessory storage. Let's now get down to a few quick comparisons. Here he is with his mold mates, that being Bumblebee. And it's really just up to you of which deco and mold you prefer. The only change is that head sculpt. That is it. Everything else is the exact same thing. The accessories, the body, the arms. It's really just a matter of preference of which mold you prefer. I think probably Bumblebee is my favorite of the two. That's just my opinion anyway, but please do let me know in the comment section down below of the two, which one do you prefer. And yes, it is just a repaint retool, but honestly, I really go in it and I highly recommend you get this figure. They look really cool side by side. We actually do have a side view here. That same backpack, as you can see, same sword. And now for another comparison, a final comparison, here he is with the leader of the Autobots, that being Optimus Prime. And I think they look absolutely awesome next to each other. And that is pretty much it for comparisons and this robot mode. Let's now get down to transformation. So now for transformation, what you're going to do is go to the shoulders. These little panels here, you're just going to hinge up and they'll actually kind of soft click into place. Do the exact same thing on their side. That's just going to soft click into place. And they're actually going to go to the form, hinge the hand in like that. Then you're going to get this entire circular wheel here. Just hinge this in as well like that. Do the exact same thing on their side. You're just going to get the hand, hinge this in, get the entire circular wheel, hinge that forward as well. Then you're going to go to the back, get these little panels here, kind of hinge them out. You're just going to allow enough clearance for the entire chest piece to actually hinge up and untap like that. And the panels that were just moving, of course, were these two right here. You just kind of moved them out of the way, so of course the head would have enough clearance to actually move through like that. And then you're going to actually get this entire panel here. How this was tabbed into place is this entire tab and slot. You're just going to get this entire panel, fold that in. That's just going to fill in all that space and actually complete the entire front hood of the alt mode. And then you're actually going to get this entire hinge at the shoulder, hinge the arms down like that. And then you're going to rotate at the bicep, and just make sure these panels are fully pushed out. And as you can see, there's this tiny little notch right there, and there is actually a small little tab, and that's just going to tab into place just like that. Do the exact same thing on their side. That's just going to tab into place just like that. And there we go. So now comes a bit of the tricky part. So unfortunately, if you don't already know, if you do have Bumblebee, you probably know what I'm about to mention, but this entire backpack section has a terrible tendency to just randomly pop off. So I really do apologize if that happens. I'm going to try and prevent that from happening, but if it does, you can just pop it back into place. But what you're going to do is just rotate at the waist all the way around. Then you're just going to pretty much hinge the entire head and chest region here all the way forward like that. And then you just need to kind of barely lift up this entire back panel here. And as you can see, there's two little tabs in this entire kind of slot section, and that is just going to slide into place. There is a few tricks. Some people do it different ways. I just try and do it as gently as possible without untabbing the backpack. And there it is. It's really hard to show because of course it's really deep in there. Just of course take your time, and I've actually been able to do it a few times without this entire section popping off as I just did right now. But then what you're going to do is pretty much get the entire leg, hinge this out like that, hinge this out like that, and fold it in. And then you're actually going to tab the legs, and as you can see, there's two tabs here and slots on these two panels, and all that is just going to tab into place like that. Get that nice and secure. Do the exact same thing on the other side. That's just going to tab into place like that. Then you're actually going to get the feet, fold these in like that. Then you're actually going to get these little pieces, fold those underneath the car, get the feet pieces, fold those in as well. And as for the very last step, you're just going to get this entire backpack piece right here, just hinge this out, and of course there is tabs on the piece and slots right there, and that is just going to tab into place like that. And as for the very last step, you're just going to collapse this entire panel at the front, and that is pretty much it for transformation. Let's now take a look at the details. So here we have Cliffjumper in his alt mode. Let's take a look at the details. Starting at the very front, we have some really nice kind of burning orange effect for this entire front hood section, with a very classic Autobot symbol done in orange, with the main base color of the entire alt mode done in that really nice dark red. I do like all the black details and really cool futuristic lines going down the entire back. I do like these little lines of orange as well with the front headlights. I do like the kind of triangular kind of diamond shape there, looking really cool. We have some more really nice wheels here done in gray and red, and all four wheels are actually pinned, which is really cool to see. So this figure does roll amazingly well pretty much on any surface. I do like pin wheels. I do prefer them over mushroom peg, but unfortunately, since they're pin wheels, you do see that huge exposed pin, which isn't the best. It's not the biggest complaint, of course. I do take pin wheels over mushroom peg any day, but it would have been nice maybe if they found a way to cover them up, because they don't look the greatest. But if we do look at the back, I do have all the angles, really cool shapes and stuff. I would say my one complaint for this alt mode is maybe some paint apps where the entire backlights are concerned, because they actually do have some rear lights sculpted in, but of course it's really just red, so they pretty much blend in with the rest of the alt mode. So if they maybe like painted them in black, or like a lighter shade of orange, or maybe like a darker shade of red to make them a bit more noticeable, I think that would have been a nice detail. But as far as the alt mode is concerned, I actually do quite like it. Of course, quite a few people do actually kind of call this and think it looks like a computer mouse, which I definitely see, and I think that's absolutely hilarious. But let's now get down to a few quick alt mode comparisons. Here he is with another Cliffjumper figure, that being the Earthrise Cliffjumper. And as you can see, of course, this is more of the G1 design. This is more of the futuristic Cybertronian design. It's really just a matter of preference of which design you prefer, but I think they look pretty cool side by side. And moving on to another comparison, another figure from the Gamer Edition line, that being Barricade. And I always forget how massive this vehicle is. It is just absolutely huge. I'm actually going to have to zoom out to get all this in frame, but I think they look pretty cool side by side. And for one final vehicle mode comparison, here he is with his wave mates, that being the Voyager Megatron. And his review is up on the channel. Make sure you go check it out after this one. And these are the two most recent Gamer Edition figures, a part of the Stu Series subline. I think they look pretty cool side by side. Of the two, I would definitely highly recommend to get Megatron first, because he is the more interesting of the two. You do have to keep in mind, Cliffjumper here is just a repaint retool, so probably would highly recommend, if you are on a budget and you don't have a ton of space, definitely get this one first. I'm mentioning this because there is actually quite a bit of hate and talk on this figure. There's quite a few negative reviews online and on YouTube right now, which I really don't think this figure warrants that much hate. I actually think it's pretty solid. Is there a few problems and complaints I have with it? Of course, but I actually still think it's a very solid release, a part of the Stu Series Gamer Edition subline. And of course, it's a new mold. This is just a repaint, so I'd highly recommend to get this one. And if you can, of course, sometime I would get this one because it's actually a very solid repaint. But that is pretty much it for the alt mode comparison. So now for accessory storage, there's actually quite a few areas and opportunities to store these weapons. So of course he does come with 3, the 2 blasters and the sword. There's like pretty much slots everywhere. There's one on the top, there's 4 on the back, there's actually 1 underneath. So for the one underneath, there's actually only 1 weapon can actually fit here, because if you do use this big one, it'll actually not have the figure be able to roll. So you do have to use the small skinny one, because then that can actually fit. And of course then the alt mode can actually still roll. So that one's kind of really specific to one weapon, but as for these other ones, it doesn't really matter. You could put any of them there. I'm actually going to put this huge giant one on the top there, and I think that looks pretty cool. And then it's just that, you know, tab and slot system that we're used to, and I'm going to put the sword on the back. So there we have all 3 weapons stored, and if you wanted to, of course, you could remove the skinny one and put that one on the back, because there's even more slots there, or you could put it on the top. It's entirely up to you. And I think there's some really good accessory storage, but just putting those off to the side, we're actually going to get into the reverse transformation. So what you're going to do is get the entire backpack section and hinge this up pretty much slightly, just out of the way, just to get some clearance. Then you're actually going to get these little pieces here, hinge them forward like that. Then you're going to get the feet, hinge them out, and then you're going to actually hinge these forward and out like that. Then you can actually get these little pieces, pretty much cover them over the feet like that. Then you can untab the entire leg. There is of course tabs here and slots on these panels. You're just going to hinge that out and fold it out like that. Do the exact same thing on the other side. Just untab that and then fold this out, and there we have pretty much the legs all done. Then you're just going to slightly lift up the entire piece right here, and how this was slid or kind of tabbed into places, there's these little gaps right here and 2 little kind of teeth pieces or tabs, and it just slides into that piece right there. Then you're going to rotate at the waist all the way around like that. Then you can slightly somewhat hinge the entire backpack piece up. I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit more so you can see all of what I'm doing. You're going to then get the entire arm here, untab it from that notch, and how this is tabbed into places, there's a little tab right there and a small tiny little notch right there. Hopefully you can actually see it. It's a very small tiny piece. Do the exact same thing on their side, just hinge this out. And then you're actually going to collapse these pieces here just to get some added space. And then of course hinge up on that shoulder joint. Hinge up on that shoulder joint, then you can actually collapse this little shoulder pad like that, and then you can rotate at the bicep, get this little circular wheel piece here, hinge this back, and then you can actually fold in the hand, and there we have one arm completely done. Do the exact same thing on their side, just rotate the circular wheel back, rotate the hand in, and then you're actually going to get this entire panel from the back, just push this forward all the way. It can be pretty tricky. There we go. Push that through all the way, and then you can actually just collapse this entire section here, push these in, and how this will tab in places, there is a tab right there, and there is a slot on that panel that I just pushed through, and that will just tab into place like that. Let me just quickly straighten everything up, and there we have the reverse transformation for Cliffjumper. Let's now get down to the final thoughts. Now for the final thoughts for the Transformers 2 series, Gamer Edition 05 Deluxe Class Cliffjumper. I think overall this is a pretty good figure. If you do have the original use of this mold, that being Deluxe Class Bumblebee, you pretty much know exactly what to expect with this figure. It's just a direct repaint with one new molded piece, that being the head sculpt, of course, much more accurate to Cliffjumper. He has the little horns, really nice gunmetal gray on the face, the blue for the eyes, and of course the red for the main helmet section. As for the rest of the figure, I do like the very futuristic kind of circular angular design. Of course, if you have any problems with that Bumblebee figure, most likely some of those problems or all of those problems will pretty much stay the same with this figure. So of course the entire chest region, quite a few people had a problem with the chest region on Bumblebee. That's pretty much going to stay the exact same thing with this figure. I never really had a huge problem with the chest piece with Bumblebee, only from a certain few angles and views you can see there's quite a bit of hollowness in the chest, but I would say from the front on profile it never really bothered me. I just think maybe a few extra panels could actually cover up some hollow gaps, but overall I actually really do like the details of the chest. There's this really cool kind of illuminating, kind of burning orangish red effect on there, a very classic Autobot symbol. I do quite like that, and I do like all the several different layers of panels and angles. It just looks super cool and very futuristic. I do love the forearms, how they're actually the wheels from the alt mode, and all four wheels are pinned, which is so cool. Of course, same detail, same wheel design as of course from Bumblebee, so no surprise there. As far as articulation goes, if you do have any problems or if you are disappointed about the lack of articulation with Bumblebee, it's pretty much the exact same thing with Cliffjumper here. So he does not have a wrist rotation or an ankle pivot, which in some ways you can actually sort of kind of make an ankle pivot. It's kind of hard to describe. So there is an ankle pivot, but it actually hinges out and not in, typically how you would see with most Deluxe Class figures, Voyagers, and Leaders. It actually does hinge out mostly due to transformation because you actually do fold up the feet for the car mode, so that's completely understandable. But if you actually do rotate the waist and the legs around, of course, you can actually change the ankle pivot from going out to going in. But do keep in mind, if you do want that ankle pivot, of course, now the back of the legs will actually be facing forward, so it probably won't look as pretty, but of course, it's an option if you want to take that. As far as accessories go, they're the exact same ones that came with Bumblebee, so he does come with one sword, two differently sculpted blasters, and of course, he does have that same feature where you can actually remove the entire form and attach those weapons. Really up to you which one you want to choose. One's more of a kind of like a skinny sniper rifle, and one's more of a huge, big, bulky cannon. I think the sculpt work on all of them is really cool. There's tons of really cool kind of etchings and details on the sword. Really nice sculpt work with like the barrels and the canisters on the blasters, but in huge need and desperate need of paint apps. I had that same problem with Bumblebee. Love all the sculpt work, love the weapons. 3 accessories for Deluxe is actually really good. Some Voyagers and Leaders don't even come with 3 accessories. A really good example is Armada Megatron. He only comes with 1 accessory, and it's just that little tip for the tank. So pretty good for Deluxe to come with 3, but definitely could have used some paint. They really should have done some of that kind of illuminating cool, like burning red or kind of orange effect on the sword. Maybe they could have put like some gunmetal gray on the blasters, or maybe they could have put some of that orange in like the barrel so it looked like it's like heating up or ready to fire. I think that would have been a really good idea. Of course, if you do like to custom paint your figures, this is a perfect opportunity. I've actually seen quite a few videos and like upgrade kits of people doing that. So if you are okay with modifying your toys, of course, go right ahead. And I think that would look really, really cool. As far as transformation goes, it's probably just as annoying as before. Unfortunately, both of my figures, this could just be a my copy type thing. I could just be really unlucky, or it could be everyone's. I've seen this complaint pretty widespread with these 2 figures. The backpack really does not want to stay tabbed in. It's not the worst backpack. It's not really ugly, you know, it really doesn't get in the way for the most part. It's just very loose. Even when you're not transforming the figure, it does have a tendency to pop off if you're just maybe posing it, or if you might be, you know, messing with it a little bit, like placing it somewhere, it can sometimes pop off. Unfortunately, the only way it's actually connected or secured is actually just those little friction nubs. I think a better idea would have actually been using a pin. I think that would be much more secure and would not pop off nearly as much. So especially when you're transforming it back and forth, it does have a tendency to pop off. I've actually been able to a few times transform it without it popping off. Very rare. If you did watch the transformation segment in this review, I was actually able to, which is very surprising. I was really dreading transforming because it's just not very fun. But if you do put the entire backpack problem aside, the rest of the figures, like, you know, the rest of the parts of the transformation, the arms and the legs, it's really not that challenging or difficult. It really just comes down to that one area, which is really not fun to do. As for the alt mode, I actually really do like it, of course. As far as the alt modes go between Bumblebee and Cliffjumper, it's the exact same thing. The only change, of course, is the deco. And it's really up to your preference of which deck you prefer. I probably do like Bumblebee more. You really can't go wrong with Bumblebee, but Cliffjumper is still a really good addition to my collection. And quite a few people do make the joke that this is kind of like a mouse, for a computer, which is pretty funny. As I mentioned before, all 4 wheels are pinned, which is really good. I do like pinned wheels, but I really can't keep myself from mentioning this complaint. Pinwheels are good, but I've never really been a big fan of seeing the huge, giant, silver pin. It doesn't look the prettiest. It looks a bit ugly. I'm not really sure what they could do to cover it up. Like maybe they could paint it or something, or cover up with like a piece of plastic. Because I do like pinwheels. They are far superior to Mushroom Peg. Any day I would take them over that. But they are quite ugly, so not the greatest. But it does roll really well across the ground, which is really good to see. I do love all the futuristic lines and angles. It's a very circular, angular mode, which is really fun, really well compact. All the accessories can store in several ways. You can actually store them underneath the entire alt mode. You can actually store them on top of the alt mode and actually at the back of the alt mode. Speaking of the back of the alt mode, I actually do have a complaint as far as paint wise, because the back lights are actually not really painted. They actually do have a bit of orange there. I think it's orange plastic, which is fine and all, but considering the rest of the figure is orange and red, they pretty much blend in. You can barely even tell there's actually backlights there or rear lights there. So I think they probably should have painted them maybe like a brighter orange or like a really dark orange or like a black for them to stand out more, because as is, you can barely even tell they're there. But that's a very minor complaint. I think overall this is a very fun figure, of course. I wouldn't really say this is a must buy now. I do highly recommend it. It's a very fun figure. I do have a few complaints here and there, but overall I do think the Gamer Edition Bumblebee mold is actually a really good mold at that. But of course there's actually 2 Gamer Edition figures coming out in this Wave of Stew series. There was the Megatron and the Cliffjumper. I would highly recommend to go after the Megatron. I know quite a few people have actually had some major complaints with that figure. No, the Megatron figure isn't perfect, but I would say it's far more interesting and superior to this Bumblebee or this Cliffjumper figure. So if I were to pick one of the 2 Gamer Edition figures, definitely go for Megatron. Don't let the reviews scare you, because I've actually watched quite a few and some of them are really negative on the figure, which I really don't think is worth it. I really don't think he deserves that much hate. That's just my opinion anyway. I really do hope you enjoyed this review. Of course, please leave all your thoughts on this figure in the comment section down below. Which of the 2 variations of this mold do you like so far? That being Bumblebee or Cliffjumper. I prefer Bumblebee. I do hope you enjoyed this review, and I will see you next time.